Bills Mafia. This is the video that separates the optimists from the realists, because today we are putting 12 names under a microscope, and every single one of them is walking into training camp with a giant target on their back. Not from opponents, from their own fan base, their own front office, and their own legacy. These are the players who absolutely have to show up in 2026, or the consequences could reshape this entire roster before we even get to the playoffs. We're talking about a franchise left tackle whose body might be betraying him, a blockbuster trade acquisition who has to justify a second-round pick and a massive contract, a veteran pass rusher who needs to finally be the answer this defense has been searching for, young players fighting for their careers, and injury-prone stars who simply have to stay on the field. Buckle up, because we are breaking down every single one, bucket by bucket, and by the end you're going to understand exactly why this might be the most consequential training camp in years. Let's start with the players who need to prove there's still gas left in the tank, because this first group might be the most nerve-wracking of them all. And we begin with a name that should stop every Bills fan in their tracks. Dion Dawkins, the starting left tackle entering his age 32 season. Now look, we have to be honest with ourselves here, because last year simply wasn't up to Dawkins' usual standard. Yes, he made the Pro Bowl again, but let's be real about what that actually meant. It felt a lot more like a legacy nod, a courtesy vote based on reputation, than a reflection of him actually being one of the elite left tackles in football last season. And when you dig into the numbers, the concern becomes even more obvious. Across 15 starts, Dawkins racked up 10 penalties, allowed 7 sacks, and surrendered 42 total pressures. That sack total tied a career high. That pressure count set a new career high. And that penalty total made him the 6th most penalized player in the entire NFL, with the 2nd most false starts in the league, including 5 separate false start penalties committed at home. That is not the Dion Dawkins we've come to expect from one of the anchors of this offensive line. So what happened? A big part of the explanation circles back to his conditioning. Dawkins reportedly looked heavier than usual last season, carrying weight that clearly affected his mobility and technique. To his credit, he's acknowledged it publicly and committed to entering this season at the lightest weight he's played since his rookie year, recently revealing on social media that he's already dropped 45 pounds. That's a legitimately encouraging sign. But here's the brutal truth hanging over this situation. If Dawkins can't recapture his previous form, the consequences are massive. We've seen offensive tackles age gracefully into their mid-30s before, legendary names who found ways to remain elite well past 30. But that's not guaranteed for anybody. Dawkins has to prove he belongs in that conversation, because if he doubles down on last year's decline, or worse, takes another step backward, this very likely becomes his final season wearing a Buffalo uniform. That's not a dramatic overstatement. That's the real stakes sitting on the shoulders of a guy who has given this organization a legendary run at left tackle. The next name in this gas in the tank bucket is one that's going to spark plenty of debate. DJ Moore. Buffalo made a massive franchise-altering move this offseason, trading a second-round draft pick and absorbing a hefty contract to bring Moore in as Josh Allen's new primary weapon. But here's the uncomfortable reality nobody wants to say out loud just yet. There's genuine concern swirling around whether Moore can actually deliver on that investment. Entering his age 29 season, Moore is coming off the fewest catches and the fewest receiving yards of his entire career. Now, to be fair, this isn't a durability issue. Moore has been remarkably reliable throughout his career, appearing in an incredible 131 of 133 possible games, missing time only due to COVID and a concussion. This is a production concern, not an availability concern. And when you look at how his final season in Chicago actually played out, the picture becomes clearer. By the back half of last year, That Bears passing offense simply wasn't built around Moore anymore. The spotlight had shifted toward their younger core, and Moore found himself in a diminished role, which is exactly why Chicago was willing to move on from him in the first place. So now Buffalo has taken on that risk, spending real draft capital and real money on a receiver coming off arguably the least productive season of his career. This needs to work. After 2 straight years of exhausting conversations about the receiver room's shortcomings, this was Brandon Beane's big swing, his answer to years of criticism. And if Moore doesn't prove there's still elite production left in the tank, it doesn't just look bad on paper. It puts enormous additional pressure on the rest of that receiver room, on Keon Coleman, on Josh Palmer, on Skylar Bell, all of whom would suddenly need to pick up significantly more slack. But if Moore is who Buffalo believes he is, this offense suddenly has far less dependency on that unproven young trio, and Josh Allen gets the true #1 weapon this offense has been missing. Rounding out this first bucket is Bradley Chubb, the other headline veteran addition this offseason alongside Moore. Chubb just turned 30 in June, and while he's undeniably been an impactful player throughout his career, the injury history is real, and last season, even though he managed to play every game, he simply didn't show the same explosive juice fans remember from his best years, which honestly makes sense given it was his first full season back from a significant injury. Buffalo committed 3 years to Chubb, and they're locked in for at least 2 more seasons of that deal. This represents the franchise's latest attempt to finally solve the pass rush puzzle, a puzzle that has haunted this roster for years. Just look at the list of names Buffalo has thrown money at trying to fix this exact problem. Joey Bosa, Von Miller, Michael Holt, Leonard Floyd, Mario Addison, Trent Murphy. Time and time again, veteran edge rushers, often coming off injuries themselves, brought in with high hopes, and time again, the results have fallen short of expectations. Chubb is the newest attempt at cracking that code, and if he can't prove there's still real juice left in his game, it's simply another failed edge rush investment, piling even more pressure onto a rookie in TJ Parker, onto Michael Holt as he returns from his own Achilles injury, and onto a still unproven Javon Solomon. Now let's shift into the second bucket, the players who need to prove they're ready to handle a genuinely big role, because this next group is loaded with fascinating young talent facing legitimate crossroads moments. First up, defensive lineman Deone Walker, a 4th-round pick from last year who flashed serious potential as both a run defender and a pass rusher during his rookie season. And here's the thing Bills fans need to understand. The interior defensive line might be the single most concerning position group on this entire roster heading into camp. Buffalo largely lost talent along the interior this offseason and only added modest reinforcement through the draft, which means the front office is essentially banking on internal development to solve this problem. Walker is the name generating the most excitement out of that group, the guy who gave fans something concrete to point to and get genuinely excited about. The question now is whether he can replicate those flashes with real consistency across a significantly expanded snap count in year 2. There's real reason for optimism here too, since the back injury that hovered over his pre-draft evaluation is now firmly in the rearview mirror, and instead of spending this offseason rehabbing or training for a scouting combine, Walker has spent it purely training to play defensive line at the NFL level with a full season of experience already under his belt. But here's the sobering reality about the consequence if this doesn't come together. It's not just about Walker individually. At least one other name from that same group of young interior linemen needs to step up alongside him. If none of them take that leap, this instantly becomes a massive season-altering problem, forcing the front office to scramble for outside veteran help in some form. Next in this bucket is a familiar face from our earlier storyline, offensive lineman Alec Anderson, now entering his 5th season with the organization after years spent developing on the practice squad and carving out a role as a versatile utility blocker. Anderson is now staring down a genuine opportunity to claim the starting left guard job. The good news for Buffalo is that there's a real safety net in place here. Several other interior linemen capable of sliding into that role if Anderson doesn't seize the opportunity. But this is undeniably his moment, his chance to go from beloved depth piece with a great personality to a legitimate every-down starter. It's the kind of player development story every organization dreams about being able to tell, and Anderson has a real shot at making it happen. Then there's cornerback Max Hairston, and this situation carries some fascinating intrigue. Buffalo used significant draft capital to bring in a rookie cornerback this year, a player the coaching staff has reportedly raved about, someone whose skill set appears to align perfectly with what the new defensive coordinator wants in a starting corner. But here's the thing about competition. If Hairston is simply the better player, he plays. Full stop. This is a massive opportunity for him entering his second season after flashing genuinely encouraging tape as a rookie. Everything is right there for the taking. But if he can't hold on to that job, the rookie is waiting in the wings, ready to take it from him, and that would represent a serious blow to the trajectory of what was supposed to be a foundational, premium draft investment. The final name in this bucket is linebacker Dorian Williams, and his story might be the most quietly compelling of the entire group. For 3 seasons now, Williams has bounced in and out of the lineup, picking up valuable situational reps whenever injuries opened the door, whether that meant filling in during someone else's absence or contributing in specific sub-packages. Now entering a contract year, he's staring at a genuine opportunity to become a full-time, every-down starter. If he seizes it, it validates years of patient development. If he doesn't, and especially if injury plays a role given that he actually spent time on crutches this offseason, it likely signals the end of his time in Buffalo and forces the organization to lean on either a rookie or outside veteran help at that position. Now we arrive at the third and final bucket, and honestly, this might be the most anxiety-inducing group of them all, because these are the players who simply need to prove they can stay on the field. 6 names live in this category, and it starts with arguably the most important defensive player on the entire roster, Ed Oliver. Oliver is coming off a bicep injury complicated by a knee issue that created a setback in his overall recovery timeline. And given everything we just discussed about the uncertainty across the rest of the interior defensive line, the pressure on Oliver to simply be available and productive is enormous. He remains the most proven, most reliable commodity that unit has. And there's genuine excitement about how his skill set could thrive within the new defensive scheme with more opportunities for one-on-one matchups. But none of that potential matters if he can't stay healthy. If Oliver goes down or simply isn't the same dominant force, combined with the uncertainty already surrounding names like Walker and the rest of that young interior group, this defensive line could find itself in a genuinely dire situation. Next is tight end Dalton Kincaid, and honestly, Bills fans already know this story by heart. The flashes have been undeniable. We've all seen exactly what Kincaid is capable of when he's on the field, the kind of game-breaking, mismatch-creating production that could make him one of the most dangerous receiving tight ends anywhere in football. The only thing standing between Kincaid and true stardom has been availability. Imagine what this offense looks like if he's simply healthy for a full season, commanding a larger route share and consistently making the kind of plays we've only gotten in small doses. The upside is enormous, but if history repeats itself and injuries once again limit his impact, Buffalo has to lean back on Dawson Knox and keep an eye on Shane Zylstra as a complementary move piece, missing out entirely on the tantalizing ceiling that Kincaid represents. Then there's linebacker Terrell Bernard, a player who has seemingly dealt with something every stay healthy and produce. It places significant added pressure on Dorian Williams and Caleb Lenoir to fill the gap, and the front office would likely need to explore outside linebacker help. Wide receiver Josh Palmer is next on this list, and unfortunately, his entire career has followed a similar pattern of promise interrupted by injury. last season featured a knee issue and an ankle problem that ultimately landed him on injured reserve, and alarmingly, he was reportedly still working off to the side during this offseason's organized team activities, a full 6 months removed from his last game action without having undergone surgery. That's a concerning gap. Palmer possesses genuinely exciting skills as a route runner, with nuanced footwork and reliable hands that make him an intriguing weapon on paper. But he simply hasn't been available long enough to claim the significant role his talent suggests he deserves. The silver lining here is that the consequences of Palmer struggling with availability again are relatively contained compared to some of these other names, especially assuming DJ Moore delivers as expected. Buffalo still has Keon Coleman, still has Skylar Bell, and could always explore outside veteran options if needed. Michael Hogt represents another critical health story to monitor as he works his way back from an Achilles injury after flashing serious promise across just 7 quarters of action before going down. The good news is Buffalo has built in real protection here thanks to the drafting of TJ Parker and the signing of Bradley Chubb with Rousseau, Solomon, and Mike Dana all providing additional depth at the position. So while the roster wouldn't crumble if Hoke's return gets delayed or complicated, there's a real sense of what could have been looming over this situation, similar in some ways to the Von Miller signing a few years back, where the Bills got one electric, dominant performance before injuries derailed the full vision of what that defensive line could become together. And finally, we close this list with a name that might surprise some fans, but shouldn't be overlooked: kicker Tyler Bass. Bass didn't kick at all last season after the team attempted multiple times to ramp him back up, ultimately requiring surgery, and he currently sits as the uncontested kicker on this roster heading into camp. Never underestimate how much a kicker's reliability can swing the outcome of tight games. Bass has certainly delivered memorable moments in the past, including a clutch 60-yard field goal against Miami that had this fan base buzzing. But coming off a full year away from actual kicking, with genuine questions about the demands a groin or pelvic-type injury places on the specific mechanics of kicking, there's real reason for caution here. He absolutely has to prove he's ready for the rigors of a full NFL season, because if he can't, Buffalo may find itself scrambling to bring in outside help at the position. So there you have it, Bills Mafia. 12 names, 3 brutal buckets, and an entire season potentially hanging in the balance based on how these storylines play out. A franchise left tackle fighting father time. A blockbuster receiver trade that absolutely has to pay off. A pass rush investment praying to finally break a years-long curse. Young talents on the interior defensive line, at guard, at cornerback, and at linebacker, all fighting to prove they belong in bigger roles. And 6 critical players simply needing their bodies to cooperate for a full 16 or 17-game season. Training camp is right around the corner, and every single one of these stories is about to start writing itself in real time. So here's what we want to know from you. Out of all 12 names we just broke down, which player's success or failure worries you the most heading into this season? And which one are you most confident is going to step up and deliver? Drop your predictions down in the comments below because we read every single one of them. If this breakdown helped you get a clearer picture of what's really at stake for the Buffalo Bills this year, smash that like button right now before you scroll away. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss another deep dive as we count down toward the 2026 season, and take a second to leave a rating and review if you're catching this one on the go. Go Bills, and we'll see you again very soon.